Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Debbie and I'm a mixed media artist, and the mixed media that I would like to show you today is a little taster of my jelly plate technique, which has been commented on and very nice things said about it, and a lot of people asking about it, which has been incredibly kind of you all. Thank you. So I thought, well, today why don't we do a simple little seascape or a beachscape, because all the techniques are exactly the same. In fact, watch until the end because I'm going to put a little gallery of pictures that I have made with this same technique so that you can see where it can take you. Before we get on, a little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, the usual thing. And if you like what you see here, do consider joining my Patreon. There's actually a bit of a special at the moment because I'm working on my Patreon to bring it up to a little bit of modernity. I haven't changed it terribly much since I started. Sort of things here and there, but it does need tweaking. And that means that the prices will be going up. But if you join at the price that it is now, I won't charge you the higher price when the prices go up. So you'll be locked in at that lower price forever and ever, I promise. Because yeah, I prefer to reward a little bit of loyalty, actually. So for people who are on there, I'm not going to put their prices up, but it will be for new subscribers. And don't forget also to, Apple have added about 30 or 40%, I can't remember, it's in the description box, to if you book through the app. So do go online and look through the web browser. It's a lot cheaper for you there. So it's quite a good value for under $10 at the moment. So yeah, just a little heads up. So probably end of February those prices will be going up. In March for sure, because I will have finished all my tweaks and machinations then, and it'll be all good to go. So good time to take advantage of the lower price, and it's the Creative Studio Club tier that you're after. It's the highlighted one, so it's easy to find. Right, so jelly plate printing. I do a slightly different technique to normal. I'm not against people who do the sort of different colors and then put that together as, some people use them as collage papers. I've no idea. When I started out with jelly plate printing, I didn't like it because I wasn't aware that I could do more with it. I thought it was all about, pressing leaves into paint and flowers and things like that. And I created masses of paper and realized that this is not sustainable in any sense of that word. I wasn't sure how I was going to use it. In the end, I use it now for my collage work, but it's not what I was setting out to do. So I stuck my jelly plate in a drawer and forgot about it. 8 years later, I thought, well, I'm going through some things here. I'm not going to keep stuff I'm not using. And out came the jelly plate. So I thought, well, rather than just give up on it, I'll have a go and see what I can tweak to make it more usable. So I did. And I came up with a technique that works very nicely indeed. I'm happy to say it's fun to do, very easy to do. You can have as many or as few materials as you like. I've got a few pan pastels to start with today, actually. I got some new ones today in the post, so I thought I'd use them. But you don't have to have a huge amount. What you need to start with is a surface to print on. I'm using my Hahnemühle Nostalgia sketchbook. It's a little one. This is a 3x5 plate that I'm going to use in here. It's not very clean. I don't care. I like texture and I want those things. I love the unexpected quality of this. It will just come out how it comes out. You have some control over it, and the more you learn with it, the more you can actually sort of control what's happening. And I've got a fair few tutorials on my Patreon now with this, and they're also available in the shop. If you don't take a membership, you can buy the tutorials individually because, sometimes that suits better. And they show some of the landscapes that you'll see in the gallery at the end of this, and the houses and things like that, adding more every week. Right, so for starters, let's get a bit of a thing here. I'm using a dark grey acrylic marker just to map out what I want to sort of achieve. It just gives me some area to go on and I can decide then how I want to work with this. So what I'm doing is I'm mapping out some big shapes. These will make more sense in a bit. Right now they probably don't make much sense at all, but let's just pop them on, just some rocks and bits and bobs here. How about we have a horizon? Actually, we can have a rock as well. We'll have a rock and the rest of the horizon. This is only a little guy. These marks won't be, they'll be there, but they won't be prominent. But what we've got to do now is we've got to wait for that to dry. So while we wait for that to dry, I can tell you what happens next. The next thing is the pan pastel layer. Now, disclaimer, I don't use pastels the way they're supposed to be used because I'm not a pastel artist. I'm a mixed media artist. So I use my pan pastels with these little makeup sponges. I've got some proper ones here as well. I can't see the difference between the two. If somebody did say once, you know, you won't get the beautiful effects that the pan pastels are capable of if you don't use the right tools. I'm not trying to. All I want is the effects I want for my particular work. And like I said, I'm not a pastel artist. So please do not freak out in horror. I also have some of these little makeup applicators here, which I use again and again and again. Then I wash them because you can wash all of these and reuse them. I've had some for years. In fact, I've had some of these for longer than I've had the actual proper tools that go with Gelli plate printing. So I have nothing against anybody who's using the proper, not Gelli plate printing, pan pastels. I've got nothing against people who want to use the correct tools. If you want to and you can afford to, you have at it. I can't, I don't, and they basically don't last as long as some of these others. And they're, like I said, they're washable, so I'm not concerned. They aren't the most environmentally friendly thing, I understand that, but if we wash them and use them for years, yes, they are. They're only bad if they're single-use things and you use them once. If they're a single-use thing and you use them about 40 times, game changer right there. Rant over, thank you for listening. Okay, we're dry. This has got to be dry because we're going to come back in now with pan pastels, and I don't want to smear this, and I also don't want to get my things dirty. I'm going to start out with a little bit of white here by the horizon because it's usually lighter by the horizon. Maybe some clouds. Let's pop some clouds in because it's a Cornish scene and there might be some clouds. I'm probably not going to need all the colours I've got out here. I'm not going to lie. And like I said, I'm not worried about the fact that there's other colours there already. Does not worry me at all. Just blotting some of this through, because this will make up the rest of our sky. Now, with this method of mine, I have actually managed to get as many as 3, actually I think 4 ghost prints was my best ever. If you leave it on your paper or whatever you're doing this on a bit longer, you'll only get the one. So if you only want one print, leave it on a bit longer. Right, so that's the sky. The next thing is the sea. I'm going to use the same colour to begin with, pinching it quite hard so that I can get in there with it. If you don't want to do that, get something smaller, because with something smaller, you can actually get in there a little bit more precisely. Do it a little bit darker out there. Go in with some lighter in the closer here. Don't forget, as a mixed media artist, we've got lots and lots of choice. So although I'm doing a little bit of pan pastel on here at the moment, I'm planning to come in with coloured pencils and all sorts in a bit to get the sorts of detail. Like I said, have a look at the gallery at the end and you'll see exactly what I mean. For the beach and the rock, I'm going to use red iron oxide tint just to get that on there. Probably some other colour would be nice too, and I'll leave that to the, put a little bit on there and a bit on there as well. Other than that, I'm going to leave it to my acrylic paints. So actually I didn't need half of these colours. Isn't that always the way? That I got them out and got them open and we don't need them because there's too many. But so far we've got a bit of a sky, we've got some water, and we've got some sandy colours on the beach. So what to do now is, This doesn't have to dry because it is dry. It doesn't need fixing because it's going to cling to the plate. What we're going to do next is I'm going to clean everything up and bring some acrylics in to finish this particular layer. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, I've got a couple of acrylics here, different colours that I think might be nice. Again, it doesn't have to form the complete picture, quite literally, because the idea of what I do is to come back and fill the gaps with coloured pencils and other details that I would use in my mixed media practice. So what I'm literally doing here is trying to achieve a grounding of colours that I can work back into. So the first thing is something on the rock. I think I'm going to use this yellow ochre, and I'm going to just dab some of that on there. I'll dab some on here as well. And also, of course, on the sand at complete random. Don't forget, everything you do is going to come out in reverse order. So I'm not paying too much attention to it. It's not important. What I'm mainly trying to do is just to get the colours where I need them to be. Won't actually wash the brush. I'm aware I'm teaching you some really bad habits going straight into the tube like this, but it's actually how I end up doing it most often, sadly. Now, I already put some pan pastel on the rock, which I've now covered it with paint, but the pan pastel will still print first because it was laid down first, so it will be on the top. This is an extremely random process, as you can see. Some sepia. Put some, normally I have my light coming in from the right and everything else from the left, but it won't work like that this time, which is fine, and I shall find a way to be all right with it. Some of these colours I'm using, not this particular one, but some of the others are Japanese colours from Turner, which means that they've got a bit of a tooth to them. That doesn't matter, it'll still print out absolutely fine. Right, a bit more there. Got enough colours in that. And just a bit of textural interest here on the sand. Now, next thing is, that has got, oh wait a second, we're not quite finished. Jump the gun here. Bit of greenery up the top, on the top of this cliffy bit would be nice. A little bit. Don't, again, I'm not washing the brush, I'm blending as I go, which is absolutely fine. And I always add it elsewhere. Just clean the brush off. And there are methods in my madness. I will show you why I've done all of this texture here in a short while. Right, not needed half of these, so I can put those away. This has now got to dry quite well, and I will tell you exactly what we're going to do next. We're going to come in with some Liquitex matte medium, and I like that because it is basically a colourless acrylic, so it's only got the binder and so forth like that. It's no pigment in it. When this is dry, we go over it with the matte medium so that we can make a print, and then when that's finished, this will grab onto the pan pastel, and the pan pastel will act as the pigment that isn't in here, and it'll just form an acrylic layer, which we can then go back over with our other mixed media things. And really for this sort of thing, I'll be looking at coloured pencils, mainly, maybe some ink and dip pen, depending on how far we need to go. So I'm just waiting for that to dry. So you need the acrylic matte medium next and some sort of brayer. Now, this one is a super cheap one. It cost me less than €2. I bought it on Amazon. It's fine for what it is. It's probably going to break at some point, plastic handle, that sort of thing, but it's actually quite sturdy and I've used it exhaustively. So one would hope that we will get a bit of life out of it yet. just blotting that where it's a bit heavy so that we don't have to wait for years for it to dry. Also add some texture. Texture is what this is all about, and I absolutely love to leave some of the older colours on there from previous pulls, because that means I'm going to get some interesting effects that I can't plan. Like I said, when you get into this and do it more, you can plan a little bit more and control it, but I like that unplanned aspect. Right, just making sure this is dry. It's not quite yet, but I shall return when it is. Right, doesn't take too long to dry actually. So the next thing to do is to drip on this little 3x5 plate. I'm going to see how 3 drips go, because the trick is to cover it now with the matte medium. Now this is where you've got to work fairly quickly, because you can't let this lot dry. If you let this layer dry, it won't print. So this is your printing thing. You just pop that in some water and roll it off on the side, and have your paper ready. Of course, I'm leaving the paper on so I've got something to cling to rather than dropping it on the floor like I'm threatening to. And I'm going to be lazy and print on the nice side. I print on both sides of the paper, but on this occasion, pop it on there. Now, that has to dry because I only want one print. So I'm going to leave it there, and I can't possibly tell you how long it is going to take to dry where you are. If you're in somewhere like Australia or the warmer parts of America, it will probably dry in a very short time. I'm in Germany, and it's winter, so it probably will take a little while, which is why it takes a while, and I'll find something else to do, more cleaning up more than likely, and I shall return when it's finished. Let's just turn it over, because what I also do is I will get my Barons, which looks like a darning mushroom actually, and make sure there's a damn good seal there. This is so much easier if you're not in a sketchbook, obviously. If you are in a sketchbook, it takes a little bit of machinations to get out the way of the spine. But this little sketchbook, which is about an A6, I think, it's just right for the 3x5 plate. Right, just have a little check. Yeah, we've got a good print. Actually, I think, you know what? I'm just going to pull that and see what I get. And just peel that off. So that's what you're going to get. If you want to see what you're doing, take the backing paper off and have a look, because this is see-through. I can just pull that off. Yeah, I'm happy with that. There's not... You can call this a ghost print because you can still see stuff on there, but it's not going to print nicely. You are not going to get the texture you're after. What I want this to look like is an old seaside photo from the 1950s. So I want this, just put that back together. I want this lovely crackled appearance here with all the textures that you get. You can't plan this. This happens, and this is the whole reason for doing what we're doing. And as you can see, the Pan Pastel Sky looks pretty damn good with this. It's better than... I've done them with acrylic, and you can do it with acrylic gouache, but Pan Pastel's so much better. And the Pan Pastel Sea, and see we've got some naturally light parts here, and it all works out rather splendidly. So that now has to dry perfectly. You can't do anything else with it until it has, because coloured pencils will not like going over it if it's not dry. I'm so sorry about the noise in the background. My dog, I have a Cocker Spaniel, and she's got a box. So she's pulling it apart, but yeah. A lot of people, when they say to me, look, I've tried mixed media like you do, and it's not working for me. What am I doing wrong? You know, I put all the paint down, and so far so good, and then I go over with my coloured pencils and nothing. The number one reason it won't work is that your under layer of paint is not dry. It's pretty much as simple as that. If it's not dry, colour pencils do not want to go over anything that's wet or damp. And if you feel it right now, I don't want to smudge, it's not smudgeable, not that smudgeable. If you feel it and it feels cool to the touch, then it isn't dry. Even though it looks dry and nothing's coming up on my fingers, but that's still cool to the touch, which means underneath the surface, it's still wet, and you won't get anywhere. You won't win is what I'm trying to say. It will get you every time because your pencils just will not work on it. So let it dry until it is room temperature to touch, or warm, whatever. It depends what your room temperature is as well. But at the moment it's dryish, but it's cool. So I shall return when that is properly dry and we'll finish it off. So when it's lovely and dry, and it has been, this has actually been sitting overnight because I ran out of time with the first half of this video yesterday. So let us hope and pray that I can pick it up where I left off. But anyway, so what we've done is we've pulled the print and we've allowed it to dry. And like I said, this isn't coming off. Not at all. That's the pan pastel bit. Because when we used the Liquitex matte medium, which I said yesterday was a or earlier in this video, we've turned it into an acrylic paint in its own right, so it can stay there and it's fine. Now I wouldn't do anything to this sky because I don't think it requires it. Probably on the water here I would be tempted to grab a pencil. Let's try this dark indigo one. It's time I changed the pencil sharpener blade. Well, it seems to be okay. Yeah, the little one's not though. Maybe I use that slightly more. I've got one of these double cum pencil sharpeners here. Sorry, that was all off camera. And 2 holes, 2 blades. They need sharpening. They need replacing, not sharpening. We wouldn't bother to do that. But they do need to be replaced from time to time because, like any knife, if it was a kitchen knife, you'd sharpen it. But with pencil sharpener blades, it's not really worth it. Very fiddly and probably dangerous. You'd cut yourself before you managed. But they're super cheap to buy. So if your pencil sharpeners are chewing your wood on your pencil, that is a sign that they're blunt, and your life will change immediately for the better if you just spend about, I think it's here in Germany, it's an equivalent of €1.60, so less than €2 to get some new blades. They're brilliant, and you won't know yourself. So moving swiftly on, I've got some pretty dark lines around these things here, which I like sometimes because it gives a nice graphic appeal to it. This is a Cornish coast, so what I'm attempting to do here with this indigo pencil is to bring some colour into the sea. Not a huge amount. I mean, the basic rule, which you can break as much as you absolutely like, but the basic rule that I tend to follow personally is the smaller the picture, and this one's 3x5 or 3x7. Let's have a look. 3x5, I thought it was. The smaller the picture, the less detail you want to put in it. You're not going to load up a picture like, you know, if it was a great big thing, you could put all sorts of details in, but a smaller picture, you tend to indicate where there is some detail. So what I'm doing here is using the pencil on its side to just blend some movement into the sea and to indicate that we understand that out there towards the horizon, where the sea is a bit deeper, it's going to be darker because that's just how the light works on the water. I'm not touching that because it looks nice and I'll ruin it. So I'm not going to touch it. What I am going to touch very much though, and don't you love it? Look at my little pencils. I've got this paint. My mum painted this plate with China paint in the 70s when she was just learning. And I don't think she'd been married 10 years, but it's a perfect little plate for my pencils when they get to a certain size, which is this size. Now, I've got pencil extenders, but I don't always use them because sometimes I like to use the pencil on its side, and you can't with a pencil extender. So this is Mars Black. It's a Derwent Light Fast in Mars Black. And what I'm attempting to do here is to just, again, do some blending because we've got a bit of a line there and I'm not convinced that I want it. So what I can do now is just go along there, excuse me, and add a little bit of darker interest that's not actually black. It's Mars Black, which, as most of you will probably know, is a very, very dark brown more than a black. Then let's go with yellow ochre over this bit because we're going to introduce a bit of light into this bit and sort of blend that down with the Mars Black. I don't want to ignore the marks that we've taken so much time to put on here with the Gelli plate. I just want to enhance them. So what I'll be doing is looking for colours. Not much needs to be done, and here as well. Now, because normally when I paint something, the light comes in from the left, and it's very important when you're painting that you decide where the light's coming from and you stick to it. Otherwise, the picture will look confused, and it doesn't matter whether it's a print or a portrait or whatever it is. You've got to pick a side and stick with it. So normally I have the light coming in from the left, but when you print, don't forget everything that you've printed will be mirror reverse. So you either have to work mirror reverse to begin with so that when you print it will be the way you want it, or work with what you've got. I'm going to go with working with what I've got. So normally the light would come from here. This time it's going to come in from the right. So my yellow pencil here, it's a little bit on there, a little bit on here. What I'm looking for are patterns in the print. See, here's a bit of light. Well, I can fill that. There's another bit. Don't want to fill too much. A little bit here on the grass. But I just want to give some light to the picture, and looking for little patterns where you can see here. So you can see a little bit of a dark and a little bit of a light. So you just work with that. Likewise, here on this side, this is going to be in shade now. And also we've got this line. See, this is too flat. It looks flat and uninteresting. This is a bit better because you've got really dark darks and you've got some light lights. They're not very light, they're just medium lights, but you've got some. Whereas here it's as flat as anything and it looks spectacularly uninteresting. And sometimes when you've got problems with your work, have a look and see if there's any colour value variation that needs to be added in. That's quite often the big problem. And if you squint at it, if you squint at that now before I do too much and squint here, you'll see that it's very flat. Whereas when you squint here, you can see that there's dark and light. The other way you can do with your work is to take a photo of it and turn it to black and white, and you'll see damn well where the lights and darks are. See, here it's a bit messy, so I'm just going to neaten that up. That's part of the horizon and then part of there. And just generally, again, working on the side with the pencil, just give it a bit of darkness on this side. I'm biasing the dark towards this side because I want the light coming from here, apparently, now that I've done it this way. Bit of Chinese white. It's not going to do much. There's just too many layers there. And again, don't touch the water. Note to self. You can put a few little rocks in the water, that sort of thing, just to extend the idea out a little bit. But we don't need to do too much. And here, just a little bit of shade. Right, so where else? Let's grab a forest pencil. This one's a Derwent Light Fast Forest, because I want to do the same here. I don't want to destroy that light bit, but it needs to have some dark next to it in order to show that it's light. That's often the only way we know something's light, is because there's something next to it's dark. Otherwise it all blends in. And I'm just going to tickle under here with this forest green pencil just to get some colour on and show that that's now light without touching it, just by doing some dark next to it. Right, now this is a pebble beach, a sort of a shingle beach, some people might call it, and these are quite common in Britain, where you get quite a lot of pebbles on the beach. Sometimes it's all pebble. Quite often that's been put, people think that it's natural, but it isn't necessarily. Sometimes it is, but not always. Those pebbles are often put there to stop erosion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and at random, not all together, I'll show you in a second why, I'm looking for shapes. So some of these, and then darken the bits in between. This was meant to be a shape, but by looking for shapes, and this is the Mars Black pencil, and go all over here, a few here. This will help to populate the beach with pebbles. Bit dark over here in the corner. Excuse me. I'm avoiding black. I've got Mars black, which, as I said, is quite a dark brown. And I'm going to go in for a couple of these with my forest pencil, which you might argue correctly is meant to be green. It sort of is, but it's also a really dark green grey. And we just keep finding pebbles. Allow some little gaps. There's a nice light one. Everybody's beach will be slightly different. Some of these are really, really obvious. Others you've got to find them. There's another one. You can darken some of the shapes in between the pebbles. See, here's quite a large one. Let's do that in forest green as well. Now, the other thing I like to do, as if you've watched my videos regularly, you will know that I found a box of my father's dip pens in a wooden chest. And I had avoided using dip pens right up to when I found them. And I thought, let's have a go and see. These dip pens and Indian ink make a really nice statement in amongst all of the other colours that we've put there. You can't get anything blacker than Indian ink. It's basically like looking into the mouth of hell. It's as black as black, which is good because that's what we want. You want that really nice, sharp contrast. So by doing some in coloured pencil and the rest with ink, you can fill the little gaps in between some. See, there's a gap. And again, everybody's picture will be different. Absolutely no two will be alike. I'm going to leave some of these larger areas because you get sand as well in the pebbles where they've shifted. And again, it's that contrast that shows you that there was a pebble here but not there. So there's a shape there. Trying not to get them all identical and trying to mix up bits and pieces here between the colour pencil and the ink. I just love these and this ink, and I'm so... the way my brain is wired up, I now worry about all the years that I've missed out on where I could have been using ink and didn't. That's ridiculous. Don't go there. So just making some indistinct shapes sometimes, which people will look at it and say, oh, you know, there's some... That's basically a pebble. You can also use the ink on your larger shapes. I'm just waiting for it to dry for a second because otherwise I'll put my fingers in it. So here, for example, you can actually get some of these little shapes in the rock. You can use a brush with this, but I find the dip pen is a little bit easier to control. And if you want sharp points on your rock, which I really quite do here, then you would use a dip pen. If you want soft pebbles that have been smoothed by the sea, then you could use a brush. Either way, I don't want to go overboard. I just want to make a point of here and there. And it's only when you do it here and there that you get contrast. See, if I was to paint the whole thing now, i.e. the whole page black, this picture would disappear. Now, that's an extreme example, but there's variations in between that too. If you put too much of one thing somewhere, it loses its contrast. So it loses the point of what you were trying to achieve. That's not quite dry. The other thing I love about using Indian ink is it's not just that beautiful rich black, but also a different texture. So when I'm finished here, you'll see if I move that around in the light, you can see that some of it's shiny. Some of it's shiny because it's not dry, but some of this here is dry and it's still shiny and rich black, whereas the colour next to it is a bit of a duller, softer colour. That's because I've used my coloured pencils. So getting those sorts of contrasts going. Now, if you're not in the UK, Cornwall is a coastline of caves and caverns, a place beloved of smugglers and pirates. There is a reason why many pirates in pirate movies speak with an accent that belongs to that part of Britain. I'm not saying anything about the moral compass of the people in Britain. I'm just saying the coastline lent itself to hiding things because of the caves and the caverns, and sometimes the absolute difficulty to get into those caves and caverns. Even though you can see them, you can't reach them very easily, and they make excellent hiding places. So these rocks have got little dark bits, and any one of those little dark bits is probably just a cliff face, or it could lead to something a lot more interesting. And I've often wondered what on earth could be possibly buried in those caves and things like that. It's pretty amazing, I think. Right, I'm just going to wash that ink off my dip pen there. Now, the next thing I want to do finally, when this is dry, is to put a little bit more shape into the rocks down here, because at the moment it's fine, you can see the shapes, but I want a bit more dimension. So that means we've got to have, I'm just going to pop the lid on my ink because I am more than capable of sending that across the room. I'm just thinking I'm going to try my Chinese white Derwent drawing pencil, because this is the best white that I use. I like it best. And remembering, of course, that the light's coming in from this side, to see if that's strong enough. It isn't really. This is the thing with mixed media painting, and this is something you may have encountered yourself. Quite often, colours will go over others just fine, and materials will go over others just fine. But every now and again, you'll find one that just doesn't. That's it. You're not going to get anywhere. You've had your fun. Go home. This is a case in point. Sometimes, especially with smooth paper, it just won't take any more layers. Or if you've used an acrylic paint, and this is acrylic gouache underneath here, of course, that we started with on the Gelli plate, it doesn't want to accept coloured pencils sometimes. Traditional gouache, great, knock yourself out, you can get lots of layers in. And sometimes the Japanesque brand of acrylic gouache, just let me grab a tube to show you what I'm talking about. This one here, it has a little Japanesque colour written on it, and also some beautiful writing. This has got a bit of a tooth to it. It's not smooth like the regular. Let me see if I can grab some without knocking the camera. This is the Turner acrylic that the acrylic gouache that I use often. It hasn't got anything up here. It's got a space where you could put it. But this one is the Japanesque one, and it's used in traditional painting, which I don't claim to know a thing about. I'm not the person to come to for that. But what I do know is it's got this fine, not sure if you can see that. I'll just hold that up to the camera. Hopefully it's, no, I don't think you can. It's got just a fine tooth, a little bit like a really fine pumice. And it gives you a little bit more scope for adding colour with coloured pencils, because it's something for the coloured pencil to grab. But mostly I've just used regular. So what I'm going to do is I have some pretty cheap and cheerful. These are nice actually. I mean, they're not that cheap, but I mean, I've seen worse. These are Tooly Art brush markers. And I particularly like these because you can just come along and swipe some of the rocks. I tend to blend it. So what I'll be doing here is looking for particular colours, just to give a little bit of a highlight on that side. And again, I'm not going to do them all the same. That's why I've got 3 colours. They come in a set, so you get all the colours. Have a look for them on Amazon. I thought when I first sort of encountered them that they were just cheap, you know, the usual cheap thing. They're not. You're supporting a family business in California. So I think personally, I mean, the fact that it's in California is not the point, but the fact that it's a family business, I like to support that. This one's not showing quite as much. Sometimes that's okay, you get some subtlety. But because this is acrylic and these are acrylic markers, this will go over the top. And it's the only way sometimes you can get it to go over the top. And you'll notice me going over the same area several times. I do this in my work, and that's how I get layers that build up. Don't want too much. Conversely, and I'll show you that in a second, normally I would do the light layer last, but this is how it's happened. The white works. just a little bit of dimension where the rocks might be. They might be sticking out a bit, or they might be wet. And I'll often move that about with my finger. Sometimes you need to go twice because it's quite a light covering. You can also go here if you feel that you need a bit more drama on the light side. You can use them on here. So they're definitely worthwhile. Here, same, just in amongst all that other colour. Again, I'm not aiming to cover anything up. I want it all there because that's why I put it there. Conversely, even though the white pencil doesn't work brilliantly, a dark coloured forest, for example, can. So sometimes you can get in there very, very carefully and add some dark. See, some of these are a bit flat. So you can add a little bit of dark, especially on the bigger ones. You don't need very much. Again, I go with the scale idea. The bigger it is, the more it needs detail. Small things don't. And sometimes I'll go onto the rock here and also onto the sand under it, because that gives us a shadow as well. See, this at the moment is sitting on top. If I put some shade there and then shade the sand as well, it sort of nestles itself into the environment. Okay, and here where we've got a few together, we've already got a bit of a highlight from the marker. Now we go in and put some shade. And this, I've got some bands on those. Let's big that up because that's quite interesting. It's a matter of looking at the shapes and deciding what needs doing and knowing when to stop. That's my problem. See here, you could put a bit of shade because that's sun's coming this way, so the shade will be on the opposite side on the sand. And all of these things help to make them stand out. So we've got the highlight with these markers pulled out at random. In the end, the white worked best. And then we've got a shade area with forest, which is, I keep wanting to say forest green, but it's forest. And it's a grey green, but it's definitely one for the kit. This one's from Derwent Lightfast. So if you buy one pencil this year, if you've not got this, get this, because it's brilliant. And yeah, it sort of helps to make it all fit together properly. And they've now got a little bit of shape to them. Right, and that is actually all I would do for that. So that's how I achieve my my Gelli print landscapes and seascapes. And yes, there's a lot more to it, and of course buildings are slightly different, but what I did want to address was somebody saying, so it wasn't nasty or anything like that, people are interested, and that's what we want, saying that did I put my details down with like a decoupage or, you know, a magazine print. I'm flattered that they think they look that real, but no, I don't. My method means you start off with your Gelli plate and you put the big shapes, as you saw in the beginning of the video. You put the big shapes onto the Gelli plate, you print it, and then you come back in and work back in with other mixed media materials. And that's how I work all the time with these. It works brilliantly, and as far as I know, I haven't seen anybody else using that technique. So as far as I know, I'm going to claim it as mine and plant a flag on it. But yeah, so if you're interested in these, like I said, I have some more tutorials on my Patreon, and they are for sale individually, so you can sort of pick and choose. And do stay, because I've got a very quick little gallery of what else you can do with this technique. So what I've shown you today can take you to other places, so you can use your Gelli plate for so much. I actually bought one, shoved it in a drawer, like I said, and left it for 8 years. This year I've bought them in every size, because now I've cracked it. I'm thinking, right, I'm off and running now. I'm good. I don't number one, that Gelli plate has had more work than it ever thought it would see. And like I said, I've bought them in all other sizes as well. And this is particularly nice because if you've got a little book like this, I've no idea how big it is, but this is a 3x5, or in new money 8 centimeters by 13 centimeters. So the book is only just a little bit bigger. It's an A6 book if we use that, and it's great because you can just take little prints and pop them in your sketchbook, and yeah, I will date that then, and we know when it was taken. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Please do let me know in the comments, and don't forget to join my Patreon while it's cheap. I must make that point again, because on the 1st of March, the price will almost certainly be going up. It will be going up. I'm just not sure about the date, because I'm consolidating and making everything fairer. But people who are already signed up will not be affected by the price rise. And as long as they stay, that will be your price forever and ever. So yeah, I hope to see you there, and stand by for the display of photos of what you can do with this. I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now. Take care. Bye.